Right then, welcome back to the channel, and if I look a little bit more enthusiastic today than normal, that is because we're working on my own car. So the Touareg is on the dyno. Today we're just going to get a baseline figure to see what it's running. It's already got a tune on there, so in theory it should be about 300 horsepower, but that's not what we're really interested in this video. So the reason why it's on the dyno is because we're going to be testing a new turbo on this. It's going to be a little bit of an upgrade. The standard turbo on this from factory is a 2260. It's the GTB 2260 VK, so like the OG 2260 that we use in a lot of our turbo kits. And we're going to be increasing the compressor wheel and the turbine. It's a little bit trial and error. This is going to be the first one that we do in-house. So we're going to be getting it on the floor bench, getting it on the balancer, make sure it's all set up perfect, and then testing it on this. To be fair, it's probably not needed. I'm pretty happy with how this runs at the minute at 300 horsepower. It's pretty quick. You can have a little bit of fun with the hot hatches, give them a run for the money, and it's pretty good off-road as well, so it's quite responsive. You don't want it too laggy for when you're crawling up the hills. But yeah, in terms of an all-round vehicle, so far this has proved very, very good. I'm really happy with it. But hopefully we can make it a little bit better with the upgrade turbo. So we'll let Tom finish strapping it on, and then let's see what power it does. So Tom's just finished running this up stock and with the tune on. It's probably worth noting that this vehicle never tuned on the dyno originally. It was just tuned on the road. Pretty quick one when I first got the car, just because I can. Obviously, when you work at Darkside, the first thing you want to do with a diesel car is get a tune on it. So it was a quick file. Let's have a look at the figures. So this is supposed to be a 240 horsepower model. As you can see, stock is doing 229. So we're about 10 horsepower under where it should be. Foot-pound 390, somewhere along those lines. And then with the tune on, we've got 267.2 and probably 465, 470 foot-pound. So like I said, a little bit under what we'd expect, about 10 horsepower under from stock, which if you kind of use the same difference on the tune figure, we're about 10 horsepower under on that. So in theory it should be about 277 horsepower if you factor in the corrections, which is probably just down to the tyres. All-terrain tyres on the dyno, mud terrain tyres on the dyno, always sap some power out of it. I think we've done a video on that. If not, we've at least done a blog on that, so we'll put that into the description so you can read why. But basically just the tread pattern, it doesn't agree with the rollers, so that's one of the reasons. So we've got a baseline anyway. That's the main thing that we wanted to get from today. Get the baseline figures. We know what it's done stock, we know what it's done with a tune, so then we can see what increase we get from the turbo. So that's the only thing that we're going to be doing to this, is pretty much a turbo upgrade. We might put a 4-bar map sensor in it, just because I think it'll max out the 3-bar that's on this at the minute. But other than that, we're going to run it stock fueling and see how we get on. So the next bit of this video will be some turbo assembly footage. So, it's turbo time. It's been about a week since we last had it on the dyno. We've delayed this job a little bit because we went to drum clog in this and I didn't really want to put a development turbo on while we had a 4-hour journey up there, then 2 days off-roading, and then a 4-hour journey back whilst towing the Amarok. So we've delayed it till this week. The turbo is coming back from the machine shop today, which is why Luke's going to start ripping this to bits. I've made it a little bit easier to work on by cleaning the outside. Might have missed the engine bay, so it's probably going to get a little bit dirty, but shouldn't be too bad. I think majority of dirt's all at front, turbo's at back. So we'll let him crack on, we'll get the turbo off, and then when we've got the standard turbo off, we'll have a look at that side by side with the turbo that's going on it. Although before we do that, we're going to have to get the turbo on the balancer and the flow bench to make sure everything's set up correctly. So that'll be the next bit of the video in the turbo room. So we've got my original turbo off. Looks a little bit dirty, but what's more concerning is the compressor wheel. Not sure if you can see that, but there's bits missing. That's better. Yeah,
she's a bit knackered, boy.
There's a bit missing, bit chewed. That's prime example of foreign object damage, so obviously something's been through there at some point.
Hope it's not from you off-roading.
Yeah, might be. But that might explain why we're a little bit down on power.
I'm surprised it made power.
Yeah. But hopefully that does mean that the new turbo will make a little bit more of a difference as well. Shiny new wheel. So before, after.
I'm excited to see how much power this does.
Woo. So the turbo is fitted, a few changes from the initial plan, basically just to make sure we're getting the most from this turbo. So we've fitted the metering valve upgrade, the 4-bar map sensor and an 88mm MAF. That has meant we've had to do a bit of a makeshift tip pipe because we didn't have one on the shelf for the Touareg platform, but I think that's worked out pretty well. We just put an 80mm joiner in the middle. Other than that, everything else should be good to go. So Luke's just going to swap my wheels back onto this, so it's a fair test from what we ran the first time round. So the tyres and everything are going to be the same, and then we're going to get it back on the dyno tomorrow and see what power this does. So hopefully we've got quite a big increase on what we did with just a remap before, so see what tomorrow brings. So, as you've just seen, the Touareg has been run on the dyno. At the minute, the software that's on there has only had some small tweaks to the boost and the fuel. So, we could spend a lot more time on this to probably get some more gains, but I'll show you that on the graph in a second. I drove this yesterday before I even knew what power it had done on the dyno, and instantly you can tell that there's more power there. The problem is now we are at the limit of the standard fuel pump. So after a bit of digging, I found out that this is running an R65 pump, which is actually quite small for the 3 litres. The Amarok 3 litres that are doing over 400 horsepower will do that on a standard R75 pump. So there is an upgrade that we can put on there. It's not that easy of a job to put fuel pump on. This is at the back of the engine in the V, so it's quite involved. But that would be the next step to get more power out of this. But we're not going to do that now, so let's have a look at the power that it has done. So, as before, it did 267, and that was just on the stock turbo with a tune on there. And then now we are at 309.3, so almost a 40 horsepower gain, which is pretty good all the way across the rev range. We mentioned earlier that we could do a little bit more tweaking in the software. So as you can see, this kind of flat, well, it doesn't even flatline, it kind of dips back down and then creeps back up again. Tom says that's to do with the timing in the software. So if we spend a little bit more time tweaking, we might be able to get this dip to flatten out, which, looking at that, you'd probably be sitting at 320 horsepower. So we've got a little bit more playing to do with that. But the power's good. Low end is pretty much exactly the same as stock. So we've not lost any spool. You just get the extra from the increased size of the turbo. And then the torque, we were at, what, nearly 475 foot-pound before, and now we're at 525, so a nice 50 foot-pound of gain torque-wise. So I already know what it drives like, but let's get some cameras in the car and we'll show you guys what it drives like. So I know I said we were going to do a road test in this now, but we're back on the dyno, and that's because we did take it off. Then one of my friends swapped his wheels and tyres on his Touareg to some all-terrains, so we had these. So these are standard Touareg wheels on standard summer tyres. I wanted to get it back on the dyno to give us a better indication on what the turbo is actually capable of and how much power losses we've got through the all-terrain tyres. So we kind of knew this was happening, but until we put it on the summer tyres, we didn't exactly know how much power it were actually sapping on the dyno. But we have got some figures for now. So what you can see on the screen, we've got 309. That's how it left the dyno on the all-terrain tyres. We put it back on the dyno on the summer tyres, done nothing to the tune, it's exactly the same, and we're now at 328. So nearly 20 horsepower, nearly 20 horsepower from just swapping the tyres on the dyno. So that just goes to show that the figures on the dyno can change. There's that many variables that you can change to get different figures on the dyno. Sometimes you've got to take the results with a pinch of salt, but we did know that the all-terrain tyres, same with mud tyres even more so, they do sap some of the power on the rollers. So I think it's a bit more of a fair representation now of what power we should be at. But then also, while it's been on the dyno with these tyres on, we've adjusted some of the timing maps. So before we had this little bit of a dip here, obviously I've just said we ran it, no differences to the tune. We didn't even change the timing, but this time round it's obviously on a different map, so it's not changing the timing, so that's why we haven't got the dip. But then we have played about with the timing in the tuning, and we've got another figure. So now, with the adjustments to the timing, we're at 335 horsepower, knocking on 550 foot-pound of torque. So really good results. Like I said, this is probably a more of an accurate representation of what the turbo is capable of. We are still at the limit of the fuel pump, so that's going to be in the next video. So if you want to see what power we get out with the CP3 fuel pump on there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. But next up in this video, we are actually going to get on the road now and do a bit of test driving. So see what it drives like. So finally out on the Touareg, and just as I'm letting the engine warm up, it's probably worth noting that this drives exactly the same as standard. So There's no noticeable lag at all with this turbo on. Obviously, I've been driving this car every single day, and since fitting the turbo before and after, I can't tell a difference. The gearbox does, as with most autos, a pretty good job of getting your on boost. So as soon as you want to accelerate, put your foot down, it'll drop to the right gear and you'll be off. You're not having to worry about being in the wrong gear, being off boost, and obviously worrying about the spool of a bigger turbo. So yeah, first impressions, really good. I'll be honest, this car is probably one of the best cars I've ever owned. You can literally just jump in it at any time, whether it's snowing, raining, sunny, you've got the sunroof, you can just jump in it and go wherever you want to go. I've had lowered cars in the past, and to be honest, I've no idea why I even bothered. Seems like more hassle than what it was worth now. Slowing down for speed bumps and worrying about potholes. There's none of that in this. So, the question is though, you're all waiting for, what's it like, performance wise? So, it's banger in sport, 2000 RPM. She's pretty quick for a big girl. Impressed, very impressed. So while the work's been done on this car, I've actually been driving our other V6 Touareg 7P Escape. So in theory, pretty much exactly the same car. That's a little bit newer. It's got the slightly newer 3-litre engine with AdBlue, but pretty much exactly the same. It's remapped to probably, I don't know, close to 300 horsepower, something like that. And jumping back in this now, compared to that, I can actually tell quite a big difference in terms of power and the torque. Before I had the turbo fitted to this, I'll be honest, I was pretty happy with performance. I didn't think it necessarily needed more, but obviously we wanted to do a little bit of development work on this turbo, so that's why I put my hand up and said, why not? One thing that this probably is lacking now with a bit of extra power, especially when the fuel pump goes on in the next video, is the brakes. So although this has actually got 330mm 6-pot calipers, still a very heavy car, so could do with probably some better pads in there. Obviously, it doesn't like launching this car. I think because of the lift kit and how much it squats, CV started clicking. So yeah, definitely doesn't enjoy a launch. I'll try it one more time just to see if I can get a better time. So just looking at the last 0 to 60, 6.84 seconds. It's not that quick, but again, for quite a big car, it's not too bad. I reckon there's some improvement to be made there. Hopefully it don't break a shaft. It's not what I want. But this car has had quite a bit of abuse off-road, and I know a couple of times while I've been off-roading that CV has been clicking. So I think some damage has already been done on that. Better. 6.5, still think there's some improvement to be made there. I said one more time, but I'm going to do it one more time, just to be sure. So this might actually sound backwards, but this time, rather than being in sport, I'm going to try it in drive, because I think in sport, it's trying to hold the revs a little bit too far at the top end, and then it's hitting the hard cut limiter that Tom's put on there. So although it sounds pretty good, don't think it's doing the time any good. So last time, we're in drive, not sport. see if we can improve on 6.5. Left foot brake, boost, go. Still don't like it, sit in the limiter. I suppose that's the only bad thing about this particular model and this gearbox. This is the AL1000 gearbox rather than the 8HP, and as far as I'm aware there's no software available, so we can't tune the gearbox to make it more suitable for launching. So I mean, it's a Touareg, it's not designed for launching, it's not designed for 0 to 60 speeds, it's not designed for top speeds. It's designed to do everything and everything pretty well. So I'm going to head back. The next bit, or the next video to this series, is going to be the fuel pump. So we're going to be fitting a CP3 fuel pump. Hopefully see a bit more power from this turbo, see what potential there is from the turbo, and then we'll come back out and see if we can improve on some times. So make sure you subscribe to watch the next part of this video. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one.